Here's how I made my first $100,000 on a low income. Now, when I first started implementing some of these strategies, I was making somewhere around $32,500 a year. And this was a full-time job that barely covered the bills. The first thing that I did was make a conscious decision to avoid lifestyle inflation. Lifestyle inflation is when you spend more money as you make more money. Many people fall into this trap. They get a raise at work and suddenly think, I deserve a nicer apartment, a bigger house, a newer car. But I stuck to my original lifestyle as my income increased. After a $5,000 annual raise, instead of upgrading my lifestyle, I put that entire $5,000 into paying off my high interest debt. So why did I not put this $5,000 into a savings account if my goal was to save $100,000? Well, because when you have debt, it's difficult to have financial freedom. For me, it was credit card debt where I was paying 20% interest. Now, I was making minimum payments, but then I realized that at this rate, I would never get ahead. So I made a decision to aggressively pay off this debt because it did not make much financial sense to have that money into a savings account earning 1 to 2% interest rate while I'm paying 20% on this credit card debt. So listen, once that debt was gone, right, I had freed up an additional $200 a month that was going towards those monthly minimum payments. So that's $2,400 a year that I could now funnel into my savings goal of $100,000. Not to mention, I had saved hundreds of dollars in interest by paying off my balance faster. And the icing on the cake with the cherry on top was that I had one less financial burden to worry about. Listen, even on a low income, you could save $100,000. Whether you're making $30,000, $50,000, or even less, reaching that six-figure milestone is possible with the right strategies and mindset. One of the most important strategies you must have is a budget. It's much easier to reach your goals when you have a plan. And that's what a budget does. It helps you reach your goals. I realized the key to managing money on a low income is giving every dollar a job. I use the zero-based budgeting strategy, which means I plan out every dollar of my income at the beginning of each year. This made me much more intentional with my spending and stopped me from overspending. Now, I did a detailed video about this strategy and it's one of my more popular videos on this channel. I'll put a link to that video in the description below. But by cutting unnecessary expenses, I was able to free up an extra $100 a month. So the budgeting strategy and avoiding lifestyle inflation and paying off my credit card debt were all the foundational steps that helped me save $100,000. Another one of the most important strategy that helped me save $100,000 was living below my means. No matter how much I earned, I always spent less than what I brought in. Now, this doesn't mean depriving yourself or living in constant scarcity. It means being intentional with your spending and making sure your outflow is less than your income. I kept my housing expenses low by renting a modest apartment and continued driving my reliable used car instead of upgrading to something new. In terms of lifestyle, I didn't sacrifice quality, but I focused on value. Living below my means is not about giving up what I love, but it's about prioritizing my long-term goals over any short-term pleasure. Now, after looking at my budget and looking at my savings goal to save $100,000, I needed to come up with a plan to supercharge my savings. I knew I needed some type of side hustle, but not just any side hustle, one that can lead to significant income growth. That's when I decided to get certified as an entry-level HVAC technician. This is a field with high demand and pays well. Any type of trade skills are great to learn because they're typically always in high demand. I'm talking about skills like plumber, electrician, mechanic, and HVAC tech. In just 2 years, I made an additional $12,000 from my side hustle, which I was able to add directly to my savings pile. One thing that I learned early on is that time is just as valuable as cash. If I was going to spend hours at a job, I needed to make sure that I was not wasting my hard-earned cash. I started calculating my purchases in terms of time. If I wanted to make a purchase for, let's say, $60, I would think, this is 4 hours worth of work, 15 times 4. Am I willing to trade 4 hours of my life for this purchase? And most of the time, the answer was no. By doing this allowed me to cut back on unnecessary spending and save more money. When you use cash, you feel every dollar leaving your hands. There's something psychological about physically handing over your money. It makes you more mindful of your spending. I switched to cash for things like groceries, and this simple change made me rethink unnecessary purchases. One of the smartest moves that I made on my journey to saving $100,000 is setting up a dedicated emergency savings fund. Now, at first, this might seem counterintuitive. How can setting money aside for emergencies help you save more? Here's the thing. Without an emergency savings fund, any small financial setback can derail your savings goals. Imagine your car breaks down and the repair costs $1,500. If you don't have an emergency fund, you might have to put that expense on a high-interest credit card, or worse, dip into your savings. With a fully funded emergency savings account, you could cover those unexpected expenses without touching your long-term savings. I started by putting aside $1,000 for emergencies, then built that up to 1 month's worth of living expenses, then worked my way up to 3 months' worth of living expenses in an emergency savings fund account. This gave me a peace of mind and kept me from being tempted to dip into my main savings account. A lot of people think living frugally means giving up things that are fun or enjoyable, but that's not the case. One of the key ways I was able to save my first $100,000 was practicing mindful frugality, cutting back where it made sense, but still spending money on things that truly made me happy. For example, if you are someone who enjoys traveling, instead of cutting that out completely, find other ways to travel frugally. Instead of expensive hotels or international trips, maybe go camping or take budget road trips. This can save hundreds or even thousands of dollars each year without sacrificing your love for travel or adventure. I took 2 budget-friendly trips a year. This allowed me to save while still enjoying the experiences that made me happy. The trick was to identify what truly mattered to me, like spending time with friends, family, and enjoying good food, and cut out the extra stuff that really didn't matter as much. Instead of eating out at restaurants multiple times a week, I learned to make my favorite restaurant-style meals at home. And instead of buying new clothes every season, I simply wore what I already had, saving hundreds every year. This type of selective frugality allowed me to save money on things that didn't value to me as much while still enjoying the things that I loved. By making small adjustments, I was able to save thousands of dollars throughout the years, and it truly brought value to my life without sacrificing the things that made me the happiest. Listen, if any of this is making sense to you or you can relate to any of it, let me know by hitting that thumbs up. So what did I do with all this money I was saving? I sure didn't let it sit in a savings account for too long, earning next to nothing. I decided to start investing. Even on a low income, I found small ways to consistently invest. I started with just $100 a month, and over time increased it to up to $800 a month, going into an index fund that tracked the S&P 500 and took advantage of compound growth. The key was to let the power of compound interest do its thing. Even small investments can grow significantly over time. Investing and compound growth were the main factors in my ability to save my first $100,000. The money I saved from cutting back on expenses, not inflating my lifestyle when I received a salary increase, along with my side hustle income, went towards investing and letting compound growth and compound interest push me towards my first $100,000. Listen, if you're learning anything from this video and would like to know more about personal finance, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I also made sure to take full advantage of my employer's matching contribution in my 401k retirement account. If your employer offers a matching contribution and you're not taking full advantage of that, you're leaving free money on the table. Listen, it's not always about how much you make, but it's about what you do with what you make. Make wise decisions with your money and your time. So start today, make those small changes, and before you know it, you'll be on your way to your first $100,000 and then to millionaire status. But first, you'll need to develop millionaire habits, and the on-screen video will help you do just that. So click on that video and I'll see you there.